So welcome to another project from Codex. In this project, you'll be able to create a movie app that, as you can see, we have a navbar and we also have a banner where we have our main movie right here. And if you click to view more, you're going to go to the details of the movie. And as you scroll, you see all of the movies that we got. And if we hover on the movie, you see that the image gets a little bit blurred and we have this little play icon. And if we click in one of the movies, we go to the details of the movie, and now you see all the information about the movie. That's what we're going to build. Okay guys, so now we can start by creating a folder and drag this folder to VS Code. So go ahead and open your terminal and use npm create bit latest like this and add it in the final. So it's going to create a project in the current folder. Here we're going to select the framework that we're going to use. In this case is Vue, and we're not going to use any TypeScript, so just let's stick with JavaScript. There we go. So now we have to install all of our dependencies. So use npm install. So now we have all of the dependencies that we need. So now we are going to install Tailwind. It is the CSS framework that we're going to use today. Tailwind, we're going to use the npm install. It's a dev dependency, so we're going to use the git flag, and then we're going to say Tailwind CSS. Then we're going to say post CSS auto prefixer like this. This is going to install the Tailwind dependency. Okay, let's go to our package.json. Let's check Tailwind CSS. Okay, and then we're going to use npx Tailwind CSS init. This is going to create a file named Tailwind CSS where we can make our configs. And inside of these parentheses, we're going to add a new string, and we're going to say index.html. This is basically to apply the styles on the index.html, and also we want to apply the styles on the Vue components and files. So we are going to say src. That's where our components is going to be located. And then I can say for every folder that has whatever name that has the Vue, JavaScript, TypeScript, or JavaScript, or TS6, this the TypeScript JSX extension. So I'm applying the styles to every file that has this extension that is inside of the src folder. There we go. So now we can head to our styles.css and delete everything, and then we're going to import the Tailwind based components and utilities. There you go. So now we can go to our main and make sure that we're importing the style.css. Okay, so now we can install Flowbit. This is basically a plugin. So now here on the plugins array, we can use the require this, and here we are going to use the Flowbit as we just installed /plugin like this. And now we have to make sure that we import in Flowbit in the main.js. And finally, the final thing that we have to do is import this content string, this node modules, Flowbit. Yes, there we go. And now we can finally use Tailwind in our project. So let's try go to app.view. But before we go to app.view, let's delete this component because we're not going to need it. And since we delete this component, we cannot import it. So let me delete everything that is inside of template, everything that is inside of script, and everything that is inside of style. We can even delete the style tag because we're going to use Tailwind. So let's just create a h1 saying hello world with class or background red 600. And now we can start our server using the npm run dev. Okay, so it opened in my local machine. There we go. So now you can see our app right here with the background that we need. Okay, so now we can start by importing some dependencies. The first one is going to be the ref, and another one is going to be on mounted just like this. That is coming from Vue. So basically, the ref is a function that returns a variable that if this variable changes, the HTML is re-rendered. And unmounted is a lifecycle hook that basically just runs every time that the component is created. So what we can do is get the movies. In order to do this, we can create a function named getMovies, just like this. And this function is going to be a sync. Then we can use the fetch function to fetch this URL right here. This URL that I'm going to leave on the GitHub repository. There is an API key that I picked from another video. Be free to use it because it's public. So now what I can do is create a new reference that is with this ref function. There's going to be movies. This is going to have all of the movies that we need. So now let me say ref. So every time that this thing changes, our HTML is going to be re-rendered. So we have movies here that in this case is going to start null, so we don't have any values for now. And then we are going to wait the fetch everything, and now we can set the movies as the fetch value. And we want to also, after the fetch is done, I want to get the response, and I want to transform this JSON just like this. So now I'm going just to console log the movies, just this. So let me go to my console. Now let me put this down below. There we go. So now we have a better view. And as you're using ref, make sure to use movies.value, so actually returns the value. So now, well, as you can see, what we receive is null because it didn't actually call this function. And to call this function, so in order to fetch our movies, we can use a lifecycle hook named onMounted. As I said, it only runs every time that the component is created. So here we have to pass a callback function like this. And this callback function can be a sync. So we can use the sync. And then what we want is to await to get the movies. Let me just refresh. And now you can see that we receive an object. And inside of this object, we have page, result, and total pages, and matchbar, and total results. But what we want is just the results. So in order to get the results, we can make another then from here, and we can call something like res. And what I want is just the res.results. So I can say results. It is going to return me the results. There we go. So now we have a proxy that is array that has all of the movies. So now we already have the movies. So now I want to make a banner, and this banner is going to be one of those movies. It's going to be random. So I can create here a new const. It's going to be banner movie. I'm going to be a ref. I'm going to start with no. This as is an array. I can start with an array, so I actually have some help. So after we get the movies, what I want to do, I want to set the banner movie dot value to be equal the movies dot value, so it's an array, and I want to get a random index on this array. So what I can do in the square brackets and use a function and get random int like this. It's a function that we have to create, and random int like this. That is going to be basically a function that has a min value and a max value. So here we can pass something like 0. It's going to be the minimum value because it starts as 0. And then I want to go to 19. But I'm not going to use the 19 here. What I can use instead, the movies dot value dot length minus 1, that is going to give us the last index from the array. And what I can do here is use the return, and what I'm going to return is a math dot floor, and here I'm going to make a multiplication with the math dot random times the max minus the min, and finally we're going to add the min. So basically what we're doing here is, let's say that we have the max and the min. Let's say that the min is equal something like 6 and the max is going to be something like 10. And here we have the math.random. And basically what the math.random does is return a number between 0 and 1. So it can be something like 0.6, just a random number. So with this number, I'm going to multiply by the max minus the min. So for example, I'm going to make the multiplication, that is the max minus the min, that is basically 4. So if I do this, we get another random integer. So let me say 0.6, just a random number, and then multiply this by 4. What we get is 2. And you can see that this 2 is minus than our minimum value. So to actually make this don't happen, what we can use is to add the min value. So I'm going to, with the 2, I'm going to add the 6. With this I get the 8, and the 8 is between the 10 and between the 6. But what I want is an int value, it's not a float value. So what I can do here is to use the math.floor. And what the math.floor does is to floor the number. So if I have here, for example, 8.7, 7 is greater than 5, then it's going to return a 9. That of course is between the 10 and between the 6. There we go. So now we are setting the matter.movie.value as a random int from the movies.value. So it basically gets a random movie. So here, let me use this double curly braces and use the banner movie right here. So now you can see that every time that I refresh our page, we get a completely random movie. So now what we can do is go to src and create a new components folder. Going to be our first. So now inside of the components, we can create a banner.view. This is going to be component, and we're going to use the template inside of here, and also a script with the setup. So now here in our template, we can just use this component, import the banner like this, and then we have to import it from here. So let me say import banner from component banner.view, and make sure that you use the extension here. And let me say here h1 hello world. And now you can see here that we have our component. So we can basically take off here the banner movie variable and the h1 saying hello world. We just have our banner. There we go. Of course our banner is not going to look like this, so what we're going to do now is to style it, and this banner is going to be dynamic. So what I can do here is pass the banner as a prop, and here I'm going to pass the banner movie like this. So now here in the banner we have access of the banner movie variable. So what I can do here is use the destructuring and then say define. Okay, so now we can define our props, and I'm going to just use the array to define it, and I'm going to say banner. There you go. So basically what I'm doing is to define a prop, and I'm saying that inside of the props we have a banner that is a prop. So I can actually use the structuring to get the banner. So let me just console log it, make sure that everything is right. And now you can see that we receive is null. Let me just console log it inside of the banner.movie. And inside of the unmounted, you can see that we receive the value, but if I console log it outside, we receive no. This because this is a sync. So in order to actually receive the value, so in order to make the banner actually await the banner movie result, we can use an async component. And to make an async component, it's actually very easy with Vue. What we can do is basically name a new variable here. This is going to be something like async banner. This is a convention. So every time that you use async component, you have to use async then the name of your component. So in my case is async banner because the name of my component is banner. What I can do is use a function named define async component, just like this. And this function receives a callback, and inside of this callback, what I can do is just return import of our banner, but we're already making the import here. So what we can do is just return the banner itself. So now here I can actually use the sync banner right here. And if I refresh, you see that we received the define async component not defined. So we actually have to import it, of course. And let me refresh, and we are receiving some errors. Let me just cut it out and make the actual import and delete this piece of code, and there we go. So now we actually receive a banner from our banner.view. Okay, so now here you can see that we have our banner, and this banner has some properties. And for example, if I want to get the title, what I would do is do the banner, and we have here a property named title. So what I would do is just say banner dot title, and that way we get the title. But it's a little bit annoying of how we always use the banner dot something. So what we can do instead is use the structuring. So here I'm going to say const, and then here pass the banner, just like this. And as you know, we can change the names of our variables on here. So here, for example, instead of using the overview, we can say description. We're changing the name. Here we can say background. Instead of releasing date, yeah, I'm going to leave like this. Then vote average is going to be vote. And finally, original language is just going to be language. There we go. So now instead of using the banner.title, what I can just use is the title. So if I refresh, now you just see the title right here. There we go. Now let me try to display the image. So I'm going to create the image tag here. In the src, what I'm going to do is use the background. If I refresh, we don't see anything. Let me just put this inside of a div, and here I miss a key. A Q. There we go. So now we see a blank image right here. And this is happening because this is not the right path. So in order to get an image, we have to create here a variable. And then this variable is going to contain this string right here that you can copy in the description, and you can just copy like this. Okay, so this is a link that links to an image, and here we are passing our background. And then here we can just pass here image. There we go. So now you see the image right here. In our case is our background. As we are going to use this multiple times in our application, is a good practice to create inside of the src folder, a folder named lib. And inside the lib, we're going to create a file named getimage.javascript. This is going to be a function. This for default, a function named getImage like this. And this function is going to receive a src and is going to return in the end this string right here with the src, just like this. Now what you can do is call this function getImage and pass the background right here, and make sure to import inside of lib folder getImage. It has to be on the top, and there we go. Now we have our image. If you want, you can just copy this piece of code and paste it in here and delete this thing. The result is going to be the same. So actually what we want is not an image, but is a background right inside of the div. So here we can use a style binding right here. So here is basically as we are writing css, that's why here we can use something like background image. And instead of the background image, we are going to say there's going to be a URL, and then here we can use our getImage function just like this and pass our background like this. Let me just take off here the spaces. Let me refresh, and we cannot see nothing. Let's try to add some size this div. Let's say here in the class w screen and h screen. What it does is basically saying to the width of this div be the size of the screen. It's basically view width. And same thing for the height, is saying to occupy the whole width or the whole height of the screen. And now you can see our background, but we cannot see nothing because this background is not in the center. So here we can say background position just like this and say center 2 times. So it's going to be in the center, and add a comma here, and there we go. Now our background is now in the center. If I increase my screen, you see that we have a background. There we go. Now inside of this div right here, we can create another div that's going to be this one right here, and this div is going to have some properties. I'm going to say to the all of the text that is inside of this div, that is going to be white. And then we can add some padding to this div, and then say flex column justify center w full h full pg gradient to air from black to transparent. This, and here let me just create the h1 saying okay. There we go. So basically what we have done here is add some padding, as you can see, and then we are saying this is going to have the display of flex, and the flex duration is going to be column, and then we're going to justify the items on the center. So now our items is on the center in the y-axis, and then we're going to say to this div occupy the whole container that he's in. So he's saying to be basically with the full width and the full height of the parent container. And then we're saying to this div there's going to have some background gradient to air. This basically saying that it's going to have a gradient background from the left to the right. And here we are setting the colors for our gradient. So we're saying it's going to start from black, and then it's going to go transparent. So now here we have a darker spot and here is completely transparent. This is a gradient. There we go. And of course, we don't want an A here. What we want is some description about the movie. So here at H1, we can put here inside our title. This is the title of our movie. And then here, we're going to say class. And we're going to increase the size of the text. So here I can say text 8XL. That is basically saying to the text be 8 times extra large. This is going to be a very big text. If you hover on it, you see that the size is up is 96 pixels. There's the size of our text. And then I want to say to our text be bold. So font bold, just like this. And now we have a bold text. And finally, I want to use here the description. And say here description. And there we go. So now here we have our description. Let me refresh to see how it's looking in other movies. And sometimes you see that the description is too long. And we don't want to see all of this code on here. So now to fix this, what we can do is to delete this description from here. And this is going to be overview. And we can create a description variable instead. And we're going to make some logic on here. I'm going to say to go to the overview and see how many letters the overview has. If it has minus or equal 200 letters, then we're going to say to the overview be the overview. So it's just going to return the overview. And if it has more than 200 letters, then what we're going to do is use the slice. So here I can say slice. The slice is a string method that we can use to slide the string. So I'm going to say to slice from the 0. I'm going to start from the very first letter and then go to the 200 letter. And then you see that we don't have more than 200 letters on here, even if I refresh. If I refresh on here, we don't get more than 200 letters. That's what we want. If it's minus than 200 letters, then it just returns the overview. So here you see that the sentence is not finished. So we are going to use here 3 dots, just like this. And now it's a little bit more better. There we go. So now let me refresh and you see it right here. Looking good. So now let's style our paragraph. Let me add the class of margin top 2. So we're going to have some space in the top. And then we're going to say width 1/2. That's basically saying to be the half of the width that it can be. So it's going to be with the 50% of our screen. So now the width of this paragraph is the half of the size of our screen. Next, we can say text small to the text be a little bit smaller, as you can see. And we're going to use a color for this text. It's going to be text neutral 400 because it's not that important. So let me see how it's looking. Yeah, it's looking good. So as the description is not that important as the title, we can make this a little bit more opaque. There we go. We have our description. And now let's create a button right here. And this button is going to have a span saying view more. And later we're going to add an icon on here. It's going to be a play icon. For now, I'm going just to leave empty, just like this. And here on the bottom, I'm going to use the flex item center. We have 1 px6 py4 rounded medium bg green 700 with the fit margin top for transition over BG neutral 800 font semi-bold. I know there is a lot of code, but that's very simple. Let me just import the icon first. So in order to get some icons, we can use Iconify. That's basically a library that allows us to get icons. So first, you're going to install Iconify. There's going to be a dev dependency. I already installed, so I don't need to install again. And then you're going to import the icon component in your file. There you go. So now you can use whatever icon you want. So let me just use this for now, just to see if it's working. Let me refresh, and we don't see any button. Okay, that's down here. So now you see that we have here a button. There you go. So what I want is this button down here, not down below. And this button was supposed to be inside of this div, not outside. Now you see a little button right here. And when we hover on this button, we have a darker background. So this is basically what the class does. It says there's going to be flex item center. You see, if I take off this is not in line and they are not in the same y axis. So if I use the flex item center, they are going to be in line and with the same height. Then we're going to say gap 1 to have some space, p y of 4 to have some padding on the top and the bottom, and the background of green to have this background of green. And finally, here we have a hover that says to every time that we hover on this button, I wanted the background be the neutral 800. So now when I hover on this button, we see the background. And we also see a little transition because of this class over here. There we go. So let me see how it's looking for another movies. This is looking great. Okay, so now I think that our app is missing something. I think our app is missing a Navbar. So let's create it. So go to components folder and create a new component named Navbar. And inside of this component, we are going to create a template tag. Just like this, we're going to create a div and just write something inside. And now I'm going just to import it in app.vue. So import Navbar from components navbar.vue. And now here in the template, we just need to import it, Navbar, just like this. And let me refresh, and now we have an A right here. Let's style it a bit. So here in the Navbar, this is going to be with an absolute position. So here I'm going to say class. Let me put my A back on here, and it's going to be flex. It's going to have a text of white, so everything that is inside of the div is going to have a text of white. And then we're going to center the items, and then we're going to have some gap between the flex. And as I said, this div is going to be absolute. So here I'm going to say absolute, and then I'm going to say that this div is going to start from the left of 0 and go all the way to the right of 0. But I don't want to the div touch on the corners. That's why I'm going to use some margin X. That's margin X is for the left and the right. And I'm going to say 6, just like this. And then I want some space in the Y axis. So in the top, in the bottom, and also a top 4 just don't stick on the top. And finally, I'm going to set the background be transparent, and I have some border on the bottom of 2, just like this. And also I want to give a color to the border. So it's going to be border neutral 400, just like this. And now you see a line right here. That's our Navbar. And this Navbar is going to have some content inside, of course. We're going to create two divs. So the first div is going to be the icon of our app, and then the second div is going to be our links. So it's better to use OL right here and here to use a nav, because that's actually a navbar. And here in the class where our list is going to be, we can say that it's going to have a flex direction. The items is going to be on the center in the Y position, and then the gap, we're going to have some space between the items, and then we're going to have some font of semi-bold. So it's going to have a bold looking. Okay, so now we're going to have at least two links for now. So here is going to be views, there's movies, and here is going to be favorite movies, just like this. And now here it's time to make our icon. And to make the icon, I'm going to use an icon. I'm going to use this icon right here. That's from Iconify. We're already installed. So here we just need to select the view and then copy that icon right here. And of course, we have to import the component from Iconify. So let's go up and create a script tag where we can make all of the imports. Let's make sure that it's set up and import the icon from Iconify, just like this. And now you see here the icon, but the icon is too small. So here we can set a width of something like 40. This should work. And now our icon is a little bit more bigger. That's what we want. And finally, let's add a span of the name of our app. It's going to be view, like this. Now you see the name of our app right here, and I want all of to be on the same line. So here I'm going to use the flex, just like this. And our text is too small and is not in the center in the vertical position. So here first I'm going to increase the size of this text. Here's going to be text here Excel. It's going to be a little bit bigger. There we go. And let's make sure that it's going to be on the center. So here I say item center, just like this. I'm going to say that it's going to be completely bold. There we go. And finally, we're going to have some gap of 2. So we have some space from here. There we go. So now we have a really nice looking navbar right here. As you can see, it's very simple, but we don't need more than that. Let's see for our other movies. This is looking very, very great. Nice. So now I think it's finally time to display our movies. So here I'm going to create a new component named movie list of view, just like this. And as the name says, this is going to be the list of our movies. So let's start by creating a script template, a script tag right here, and add the setup, just like this. And then this component is going to accept a prop. This prop is going to be movies. So here, let's just get the movies from here. Let's define the props, just like this. Say movies, just like this. Or if you prefer, you can define it with an object, movies. They say that is an array, just like this. Okay, so let's add a template tag, just like this. Say whatever right here. And now let's import it from the app. So import movie list from components movie list of view. Okay, so now let's insert this below the banner. So movie list, and as I said, this component is going to accept the prop. In this case is the movies, that is going to be equal the movies that we fetched, just like this. Okay, that's almost everything that we're going to need for the script. But here in your template, we're going to create a div, and this div is going to have a class of grid columns 3 gap 4 x20 and my 10. Okay, it's basically saying that it's going to have the display of grid. It's going to have 3 columns and it's going to have a space of 60 pixels. In this case is 1 RAM. And then we're going to have a margin on the left and the right of 80 pixels, and finally a margin in the top and then the bottom of 40 pixels, just like this. And here we are going to create our movie card. So let's say it's something like movie, just like this. And here I'm going to add a v4, just like this. And here I'm going to say movie in movies. So basically here I'm making a loop for each movie that is inside of movies array. I'm going to create a new div right here. So here I can just say movie.title, just like this. Let me refresh. And as you can see, we receive all of the movie titles right here. But that's not a good thing to do. The better way to do it is to create a new component right here that we're going to name movie card. And I'm going to create a script, setup, template, and a div saying whatever, just like this. And of course, this component is going to accept the prop. There's the movie itself. So we're just going to define that prop and define the prop whatever as you like. So I'm going just to define it as a movie. And here, of course, we have to call this component. So let's import it first. I'm going to say import movie card from movie card.vue. And here I'm going to insert this component just like this. And don't forget to add the props. In this case is the movie. But here we don't have access of the movie because we didn't make the loop yet. So here we have to make the loop, of course. So here we make v4 movie in movies. So for every movie that is inside of movies array, we are going to insert this movie to the movie card, and a new movie card component is going to be rendered just like this. And every time that we make a loop, it's a good practice to add a key so Vue knows which component to render. So here we're going to just make a random key. In this case here the math.random, just like this, and that's okay for now. Okay, so now we can jump in our movie card component, and we're going to import 2 things. So we are going to start by importing the get image because we are going to insert an image right here, and also the icon component from Iconify. So import icon from Iconify, just like this. And then we're going to use the structuring to get all of the properties from the movie, just like this. And finally, we're going to go to banner, and we're going to copy this slice of code because we also don't want the description too big right here. We just want a little description. So just copy it right here. And instead of 200, I'm going to say 60. And here also 60. Just like this. Everything for our script is done for now. And then here we are going to start making the template. So here add a class of width of full, height of full to cube the whole container. And then also grid, but in this case it's not going to be columns, it's going to have the grid of rows. In this case the row is not going to have the same width, so here we have to make a special property. We're going to say to the first one is going to have a 4 fr, and other one is going to have 1 fr, just like this. And then here we can create a div, and this div is going to have a class of relative. I'm going to say, then I'm going to explain why, and then we're going to have a group with a full, and height of full. Don't worry about the group and the relative, I'm going to explain later, but just keep coding. Here I'm going to insert an image, and this image is going to have a src. We're going to call our function of get image, and here we're going to insert the poster. And don't forget here to insert the poster path to poster. There we go. So now here you can see all of the images. Okay, let's keep on. Now inside of the relative div, we're going to create another div, and this div is going to have the class of group, hover, opacity 100, transition, opacity 0, absolute, left minus 50%, top 50%, right x 50%, flex column gap 2 with the full font semi-bold and text white. I know there's a lot of code, but again, that's very simple. Before I explain, I'm going to create here a button, and this button is going to have an icon inside, and the name of the icon is this one right here, and it's going to have a width of 60 and a class of hover text emerald 600, just like this. And above this button we're going to create another div, and this div is going to have a class of width of full, flex column item center, and justify center. And make sure to put this button inside of this div. And here on the image we're going to add the class of width of full, height full, transition, rounded medium, group, hover, blur small, and cursor pointer. And here is not a round, but is round just like this. And there we go. We are almost done with the CSS. So everything that we have done right now is to create an image, and this image have some borders, as you can see, and every time that we hover on this image it gets blurred, and also this little icon appears, and if we hover on this button or on this icon we have a green color. So that's basically what our code does. So here we have width of full, height of full, don't worry about this, and we have grid rows just to use the grid right here. So that's one of the parts of our grid, and then we're going to have another one there's going to have some description. That's going to be down below. That's why I'm using grid rows. And then we have our image, as I said, and this image is going to occupy the whole width and the whole full that it can, and then it's going to have a transition. So we have this animation when we hover, and then a rounded median to have this rounded thing on the image, a group hover that's basically to link with the div. So every time that we hover on the div, a new hover and image is going to be triggered. So in this case it's going to be blurred and the cursor is going to be pointer. So every time that I hover on the div, it doesn't have to be on the image, it just has to be on the div that we're going to have a blurred background, just like this. And also a cursor pointer. When we hover on the image we're going to have a cursor of pointer. And now we have this div right here that also have the group hover that says to the opacity be 100, just like this, because it's going to start with the opposite of 0. So in this case, the opacity 0 is linking to this button right here, so it just appears when we hover on the image or on the div. And then this button has an absolute position because here we have a relative one, so it's relative to the div, and then it's going to be on the fully center of the main div, just like this. And then we finally have a bottom, and this bottom is an icon, as I said, that every time that we hover it gets green because of the hover of text emerald 600. It's basically it. It's nothing more than that. Okay, so now let's go to this div down here, and we're going to add some other classes. Here is going to be absolute, so it's going to be absolute, the top of 4. So we have 60 pixels on the top and also 60 pixels on the right, just like this. We're going to have some padding X, a BG emerald that is a green of 700, just like this, a padding Y of 1, and a rounded of medium. And inside of this div, we're going to have a P, and this P, we're going to open this P and add a class of flex item center gap 1 and justify center. Is going to center the items inside of this div right here. So here we have to put the items. In this case, this is going to be a span with the vote and an icon right here that has this name right here, and finally a color of white, just like this. Let me refresh, and we cannot see nothing. Let's see why. Okay, it is happening because this div is not inside of the main div that has the relative class. So now you see that it's working. Now you see the votes of the movie. There we go. Okay, so now to finish, we're going to create the last div, and this is going to be an easy one, I swear. And here we're going to have a H1 that is going to say the title of the movie. And below this title, we're going to have a P that's going to say the description, of course. So here, say description, just like this. We're going to add some styles, of course. It cannot be looking like this. So add a class of text XL to be a little bit bigger, and the font of semi-bold, and a margin Y of 2, and a class of text neutral 400, just to be lighter. There we go. And if you want, you can add text of small, just to be a little bit smaller, and that's looking very, very great. Okay guys, so I was testing the code and I found this error that sometimes when we refresh the page, we receive this error of parent node that is null. It is happening because we are using the wrong lifecycle hook. Here we're using the unmounted hook. And if you go to the documentation of VUE, here it says that unmounted hook runs when all of the child components has been mounted. And that's not what we want. What we want is the on before mounted. And this hook only runs before the DOM is created. So to fix this error, simply import the on before mount from VUE and change here the lifecycle hook, and you don't need the unmounted anymore. And we're doing this because, as I said, the banner.movie is a sync value, so we have to wait to the movie.value being fetched then we get the banner moving. And if you don't await, the result is going to be know how it started. And then we're going to pass to a sync banner, and then it says that don't have parent nodes. That's why we have to use the on before mount, because it actually awaits until the banner movie being fetched, and then when it gets the banner movie, it creates the template and passes the banner movie inside of the sync banner. So this hopefully should fix our error. We don't have this error anymore. Of course, it takes some time because it's async and we actually have to wait to get the data. But I'm not seeing the error anymore. And make sure they are not importing banner, because for some reason it gives us some error. Just use the sync banner just like this and use it here in the template. You see, if I take off the import of the banner, now if I refresh, we don't see any errors. Just like this. Okay guys, so we're almost done with our app. But one thing that we still have to do is that when we click to one of the movies, I want to be redirected to a details page. So for example, if I want to click on this movie, I want to go, for example, to this route movie, and then the ID of the movie is a random one. And currently when we do this, nothing happens because this route is not in our app. So in order to work with routers, we can use VUE router. VUE router is a library that is made by VUE, and to use it is very easy. They have a really straightforward documentation. And the first step to use it is to install the VUE router. So let's go to our terminal, use the Ctrl C to open, and then use the npm install VUE router version 4, just like this. Okay, in matter of seconds the library is installed, and then you can open your server again. And of course we have to configure it, and let's do it. So let me just close off the files and let me go to main.js. That's where we're going to set up our router. Now, if you want to go to src folder and create a route folder, or route if you want. And inside of this folder, we are going to create the index.javascript. That's where we are going to create our routes. So if you go to the documentation here, they are explaining how you should use it. And the first thing that you have to do is to import all of the routes. So with the router, each route is a component. So for example, if I want to go to the index page, the index page is the app.view. So it's going to render the app.view. That is a component, or you can say a page. That's why here in the RCC, I'm going to create a page folder, or if you want, you can name views. I'm going to name view just like this. And inside of the view, we're going to create a new file that's going to be the movie dot view, just like this. That's where we're going to have our movie. And here we're going to create a template with movie, just like this, very straightforward. And here in the index, we have to make all of our configurations. So first we have to import all of the routes. So here inside of view, I'm going to create a new file that's going to be home.view, just like this. And this is going to be the home. So I'm going to create a div saying, and this is going to be our home. So I'm going to create a template saying something like home. That's enough. So now we have to import all of the views. So as you can see here, we have two views. This is the home and the movie. So let's import it. So let me say import home from, as you know, it's inside of view. So we'll go to view and home.view, just like this. If you control click, it should be redirected to this file. So let's just copy and paste on here. And this time it's going to be movie. And the location is movie.view. There we go. So now we have all of our views, but that's not enough. We have to say the route and the component that it represents. So that's why here we're going to create a variable is going to be a router, and this is going to be an array. And this router is going to be exported because later on we are going to use this router. So here just export the router. Okay, so here we have to provide an object, and then here we have to say the path that it represents. And then here we have to say the component that it represents. So it's two things that we have to do here. So for the home is going to be the home page, just like this, and the component is the home, of course. Then we're going to copy and paste it down here, and don't forget the comma. And then here we are going to say, instead of just slash, it's going to be movies, and then this. If you go to documentation, you see this right here. It's an example for the users, and we have this column ID. We always use this column every time that the route is dynamic. So for example, I have a route that is movies, and then I have the ID of the movie. So for example, something like this. This is the ID of the movie. So the route is going to be movies and then this ID right here. And no matter what, it's going to always render the component that is movie. There we go. So our router is done. Now we have to set up the routes. Okay guys, now here is not router, it's routes, because that's the routes. And then we're going to set up the router. So the router is going to be an object, but first we have to import a function that is create router, to create a router that is coming from VUE router. So here we pass the create router. As you can see here, we need some options. So here we're going to pass an object that is going to be the options. The first options is going to be the routes. The routes we already have, that is this one. So here we pass the routes, and then here we have to pass the history. And the history is going to come also from VUE router, that is create web history. That's a function, so we can pass it like here. So we use the create web history to make VUE remember which route we are in. So for example, if we are in this route and we want to back, we are not in the same route, we are in another route. But if we want to go back to the route that we was, we go forward. And now VUE remembers which route we are in. There we go. So now our route is successfully done, but we're not using this route. So we're going to import the routes from routes, just like this. And then we're going to make our app use it. So app use routes, just like this. And you should use the use here before the app is mounted. So yeah, now we get the IntelliSense and say routes. Before the app is mounted, we want to use the routes. Here, what we want to export is not the routes, but it is the router. We want to use the router, not the routes, because the routes are already inside of the router, so we don't need to export it. So here's going to be router, just like this. And of course, we're going to use the router. Now let's refresh our app, and you see our app normally right here. But we don't see any routes. Here in the index.js, we say to every time that we're on the home page to display the home components. We're in the home page, but we're not seeing the home component. This is because we have to import from VUE router a component named router view, just like this. And then you have to import this component. So let me just take off this for now. I'm going to comment, and then we're going to use this component. So router view. And then if you refresh your page, now what you see is home, because that's the content here. And that means that we have to move this code that is inside of here to home, because we're no longer going to use the app as our main view. So just copy this and comment, of course. I'm going to have some errors, so I'm going to fix that later. And then you can just copy almost everything from here, and even the setup, I'm going to copy everything. Use the Ctrl X and then paste on here. And we need also the script on the app.view, but we don't need all of this code. We just need the router view. So just import like this. There we go. So here we have to fix our import. So ref is right, router view is also right, but we're not going to need it here. Then we have the navbar that is not on this location. So let's fix it. It's outside the folder instead of components, and then we have the navbar. So here you just add a dot, and then you have the movie list. We have the movies, banner movie, very important. Here add a dot, and everything should be right. Let me refresh to see. And as you can see, everything is normal. But our main goal is when we click on here, we go to another page, and this is not happening. And to do this, we have to go to movie card, and then we have to import another component from VUE router. So it's going to be router link that's coming from VUE router. So here, as you may guess, we have to surround our div with the router link like this and put it here. So this router link accepts a prop that is 2, and then here we pass where we want to go. So here we're going to pass dynamic 2 like this, because here we're going to say movies, and then here we're going to say the ID of the movie. And let me just console log the movie to see if we have an ID. So movie like this. Let me go to inspect to see if we have ID. Let me refresh. There we go. We see here, and we have ID right here. So here we can use the ID of the movie. So add a dynamic here and use the ID, and we of course have to use the instructor here to get the ID, just like this. I don't need to consolidate anymore, so let me just take off this code. Okay. So basically what we're doing here is to say to every time that we click on whatever movie, to go to movies / the ID of the movie. So if you click now, you see here the ID changing, and we go to the movie component. And of course we don't see nothing because we did nothing on here. We have to make the details page. So first let's get all of the data. So now let's go to script and use the setup. Okay, in order to get a movie, we have to use this ID right here. So we know which movie we are fetching. And to get the ID, we have to get it from the link. So you see here the ID, we have to get it from here. And this is called a param. So this is a route, and the route has a param that is this ID. So how can we get the ID? So first we have to import use router from router view router, just like this. And then we're going to set the router to be the user router, just like this. And then we're going to console log the router to see what is inside. Let me refresh. And now you see an object, and this object contains a lot of functions. But our main thing here is the current route. And this current route, we have a value, and inside of the value we have an object. And this object has a lot of properties. For example, we have the full path, there is the full path, as the name says, the href, and a lot more things. But what we want is the params. And there we have here the params. And here we have the ID. And that it's the ID what we want. So here we can say const movie ID is equal, so it's going to be router dot current route dot value dot params, and finally the ID, just like this. Just to check if everything is right, let me console log the movie ID. Let me refresh, and let me take off this giving an error, and there we go. So now we receive the ID. Good. But a problem here that I'm seeing is that I'm not seeing my navbar. And to fix it, we have to go back to app.vue and import the navbar from here. So let me import navbar. There you go. And now put the navbar right here, just like this. Now you see the navbar right here. So the route view is something like a div that whatever route we're inside. So for example, we're in the movies route. So if you go to the routes array, you see that every time that we're inside of the movies ID, the component here is the movie. So what happens is that every time that the route changes, the component changes. So here, for example, as we're inside of the movies route, then it's going to put the movie component right inside of here. It changes automatically. So that's why we have to use the router view. And this, and what it's outside of this router view, it's constant. So the navbar is never going to change. So for example, if I go back to our app and inspect our DOM, now what we see is two navbars, because first we import the navbar from the route, from the app, and then here in the home we also using our navbar. So we just need to take off it from here and the import, and then we just have one navbar. And now let me refresh, and now if I go to whatever movie, let me go to this one, you see now that we have our navbar. Okay, so now that we have the movie ID, it's time to fetch the movie. So we have to use a lifecycle hook. We're going to use the unmounted, and it's going to be a sync, just like this. And we are going to await the fetch to fetch this big URL right here. And you can find this URL on my Git repository. So I'm going to store the variable. I'm going to say response like this. And before set this to response, after the fetch, I'm going to use a then. I want to get this response and transform to JSON, just like this. There we go. So now let me console log the response. So now you can see that what we have is the details of the movie, but this detail is only for this movie because that's the movie ID. So here we have to pass a dynamic movie ID. We're going to use the dynamic strings, just like this. And here we're going to use the dynamic block. And instead of this movie ID, we're going to pass the movie ID. So it's going to be dynamic no matter what movie we clicked. So now let me refresh. And see the result is the same, but now that's dynamic. So now if I go back to our home page and if I click to this movie, it's Black Adam. Now you see the title is Black Adam. It's the movie that we clicked. So now we can create something like a movie It's going to be a ref that's going to start no. And then here we're going to set the movie dot value to be the await from here. And let me see if that's working. We're going to insert the movie right here and refresh. And so ref is not defined it. That's because we didn't import it. So import ref and it should work now. There we go. So now we have the movie. So now we have all the information that we need to create our interface. But first, make sure to apply the styles on your side of CSS. What this basically does is sets the color of the text to white, the background to not to 900 to have this background, and it hides the overflow in the X direction. With this, we can start making our interface. So we can start by creating a div right here, and this div is going to have the class of hide screen and with the full screen to occupy the whole screen, and the grayscale to 0 because we're going to use an image here and I want to be with the grayscale of 0. And here we're going to apply a style, pass a string, and then we can pass an object. This object is going to include the background image, background image, just like this. As you may guess, we're going to set a URL right here inside of parentheses, and here we're going to insert the background. So we're going to call our function getImage, and then we are going to set our background. And of course we have to import our getImage. So import getImage from dot slash lib getImage, just like this. So now if you refresh, you don't see nothing. Let's see what's happening now with console. So here says that cannot get this image because here we have undefined. And that's true because we even define the background. So go to banner and copy that and paste it here. I mean on here, and it's not inside of banner, it's inside of movie.val. If you refresh, we're still receiving the same error saying that movie.value is null, because movie.value just have its value inside of the unmounted hook. And to fix this, you can just take off here the unmounted hook, just like this, and you can also take off here the import as we're not going to need it. Now if you refresh, here we don't see nothing, and here we have a warning that's basically saying to every time that we use our weight on the top level, we have to use a suspense. So go to app and import a component named suspense, just like this, and put the router view inside. If we refresh, now you see the image right here. So the suspense is basically to say to await to every child gets its data, and then it's going to render. So inside of this div, we're going to create another div. This div is going to be something similar with this banner right here. We're going to have a gradient, and here we're going to apply the styles. So here I'm going to say with the full height full VG gradient to right, like this, from black to transparent, just like this. And now you see a really cool gradient right here. That's where we're going to put our information. So here we're going to create another div inside the div that we just created. There you go. And this div is going to have the class of PT20 to have some padding top of 20, and then we're going to set the width of full, as it's going to equip the whole width, and also the height of full. Here we're going to display our content with the grid, so say grid and grid columns, because we're going to have columns, and item center, so it's going to center the items vertically. Then we can insert here an image like this, and we're going to set the class to width of 400 pixels, margin X auto, so it's going to be centered on the container, and rounded large, so it's going to have a rounded borders. And then here we can set the src to src of the image, so we can say get image, it's going to be poster, and we have to define the poster, and the poster is coming from poster path poster, just like this. That's where the poster is coming. And now as soon as we refresh, you see now the poster of the movie, so that's the background and that's the poster. So now here below the image, we're going to display all of the information about the movie, and this is going to be right here. That's the second column. So start by a h1, then the title of the movie, like this, The Woman King, and we're going to start this h1, then class, increase the size of the text to 4XL and make it a little bit bolder, so use the semi-bold, and finally add some space on the bottom. Okay, so now we can add a P, and this time we don't need to cut the description. We're going to set how it is about the movie. There we go. And then we can set the class to text small. It's not that important. Text neutral 300, just to have another color. There you go. And width 2/3. It's the same thing as 66% of the container that he's in, so it don't occupy the whole width. And below the speed tag, we're going to create another div. This div is going to have the class of flex column, and text small, gap 2, and margin top 3. So it's going to be with the flex display in the column direction. All of the text that inside of this div is going to be small and have some gap, and then we're going to have some space from the paragraph. So here we're going to create another div, and this div is going to have the class of flex item center, so it's going to be everything on the center vertically, and then the gap of 2, so we have some gap. And then here we're going to create an icon, and this icon is going to have a name. The name for this icon is going to be UIW date, just like this. And as you may guess, here we're going to specify the date of the movie. So say release date, just like this, and this is coming from our movie value, so just specify like this. So now you see the date, but you don't see the icon because we didn't import the icon. So import the icon from Iconify. Now you see the icon. Now you can just copy this div and paste on here, and here we're going to we're going to use another icon, and this icon is going to be IC column round star. It's going to be star, Here we're going to display our votes. So here first we have to get the votes. So here say vote average, and it's going to be vote. So here we can just use vote, just like this. I'm not seeing nothing. Let me see why. Maybe I miss. Oh, here is a fair wedge. There we go. So now you see here the vote, but let's make it more clear. So first we're going to round this number. So I'm going to use the math dot round to round the number, and then here I can pass my vote like this. So now it's 8 instead of 7 dot something. And then here I'm going to take the this 8 from 10. Actually, it's not inside of the mustache, is outside. So 8 of 10. It's a little bit more clear now. And then here we're going to copy the div again. So we can copy that one and paste on here. And this div is going to have the icon name of IO in people. And then here we're going to say the popularity. So popularity, just like this. And of course we have to get this variable. So popularity. There we go. That's how many people watch the movie. I think that's clear. And down here, so now we can copy this div and paste down here. And the icon name is going to be a little bit tough, so you can just copy that one right here and set the color to white. It's basically a date icon, a clock icon, as you can see. So now we can get the runtime. Let's specify how long is the movie. So now you see 1:35. It's not that clear, so now we are going to have that's why here we're going to make some calculation. So that's minutes. This is how many minutes the movie has. So here we can say movie duration, like this. We're going to math round the runtime per 60. This is going to give us the time in hours, just like this. So now here we can set the movie duration. So now here says 2 hours. So there we say hours like this. And we can even use a slash here and then say runtime. So it gives the time in minutes. So here we say minutes like this, add a space, and there we go. So now it's more clear. And finally, to finish this, we're going to create the last div, and this div is going to have the class of the same above. So we can just copy and paste on here. So we can cut it out, and this is going to be a special div. Let me console log the movie. Console log the movie dot value. And if you console log, go to the console, now you see the object, and if you go to production countries, you see the countries that produced the movie. So we're going to get the first one, and then we're going to display an image of the flag of the country. So to get the first country, what we have to do is say const, open this, and this to here. So it's going to be const country. It's going to be movie dot value. It's inside of production countries. This thing right here. production countries. So it's going to be inside of production countries like this, and it's going to be on the first position. So where we want to stay ISO name, so we can say ISO 3166.1 like this. So now when we console log a country to see what we get, and as soon as you refresh, now you see CA, that's Canada. And in order to get the flags of the country, we're going to use the country flags API. It's an API that you can use. It has this format, so you say countryflagsapi.com, then you say the file type, it's PNG or ACFG, and then you say the ESCO of the country. So we can do the same in our app. So here we're going to add an image and close the image like this. And this image is going to have the class of width of 8. I don't want the image be too big. And then the RCFC is going to be the countryflagsapi.com. And as it's going to be dynamic, we're going to use the strings right here. And then we say the format of the image is going to be PNG. And then we are going to add a dynamic block and then set country. And as the country is, as you can see, the country is in uppercase, and here we need in lowercase, then we just need to call the function to lowercase. Or if you want, you can just call it right from here. So now if you refresh, you see a blank image, and to fix this, you're going to have to use the cross origin of anonymous, and now you see the image right here. That's where the movie was produced. There you go. So now we can add a span, and now add the country. So Canada. With this, our movie details is done. But if I want to go back to the home page, what I do is change here the route, and that's not good. So now back to our code, we're going to close all of the tabs and go to Navbar. And here on the Navbar, we're going to add a nav link. So say we're going to import the router link from the router, and I want to, every time that I click on this div, I go to the home page. So we can just change it to router link, and here we have to add a href or a 2 right here, and just add a slash because it's going to the home page. Can refresh, and now if I click here, now we're redirected to the home page where we can see all of our movies. We can click on the movie and get the information. So now with this, our project is almost done. We just need one more thing. To when I click to this movie, I want to go to the details of the movie, and this is going to be very easy. It's actually the same thing. So here we can import first the VUE router, and then we can go to banner as we have our banner, and then paste the router link right here. And I want to, every time that I click on this button, I go to, it's going to be dynamic, so it's going to go to /movies / the movie ID. So ID right here, and we know the ID is coming from here. So now we get the ID, and if I refresh and I click on this button, we're not being redirected. Now we are. There we go. So now you see the movie right here. So it's the movie right here, and if I click, now I get the details of the movie. There we go. So now we can deploy our app to the internet. And to deploy our app on the internet, we can create a new repository right here. It's going to be MoView. The name of our repository is going to be MoView, like this, and it's going to be public. And then we can just create the repository. make sure that you have Git and GitHub. And now we can just stop the server and say git add everything. And to add everything, we have to initialize the Git. Let me just open all the way. So we're going to init the GitHub and then add everything that we got in our code. And then we're going to commit, and you have to add a message and say commit. And now we have the code committed. And now we have to copy this URL right here, and then we have to push it to this repository. So git push like this, and for me it gives an error. It says to use this instead, so that's what I'm going to do. And there we go. So now we have everything on this repository, as you can see. And to deploy our app on the internet, we're going to use Vercel. So all you have to do is sign up, and you're going to sign up with GitHub. And then with this, now you're going to be redirected to this page. And if you publish your project on the GitHub repository, it's going to appear right here. In this case, it's MoveView, as you can see. So now we can say import. Here we say the project, or the name of the project is going to be MoveView. We don't need to change anything on here. And with one click, we're going to deploy our app on the internet. So now you wait the result to deploy it. And in a matter of 10 seconds, our app is deployed. So now if you click to it right here, now you see our app on the internet. If we click on one of the movie, we get the results. And with this, we finish our project. See you in the next one.